Now we arrive at Milton's Paradise Lost, first published in 1667. The original version contained 10 books with more than 10,000 lines of verse, an enormous undertaking. Later, in 1674, Milton brought out a second edition arranged into 12 books following the model of Virgil's Aeneid. This shift in structure has actually been highlighted in exam, so it's worth noting carefully. The poem is Milton's masterpiece, retelling the biblical story of the fall of man, the temptation of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan, and their expulsion from Eden. The framework is epic in style. It begins in medias res, that is, in the middle of the story, and it includes the traditional invocation of the muse and the classic epic question. Yet, while the form is classical, the subject matter is distinctly Christian, and this distinction has been tested in exam. The central figures of the poem are God, Satan, Adam, and Eve, and identifying them correctly has come up in exam questions before. Over the years, interpretations have varied. William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley provocatively viewed Satan as the true hero, celebrating his rebellion against heaven's tyranny. Others, however, focus on Milton's theology of obedience and free will. Paradise Lost left its mark far beyond poetry. Joseph Haydn's oratorio, The Creation of 1798, and John Keats's Endymion both drew inspiration from Milton. This influence has been raised in exam as well. Milton himself followed the work with Paradise Regained in 1671, narrating Christ's temptation in the wilderness. Even in modern times, the poem echoes. William Golding titled his novel Darkness Visible from a striking line in Paradise Lost, and that connection has been directly asked in exam. So here we see Milton blending classical epic techniques with Christian doctrine, producing a poem that remains central not only to literature but also to the UGC syllabus. Milton's Paradise Lost opens in the middle of the story, or in medias res, with Satan and his fallen angels already cast into hell. This starting point has been directly tested in exam, so remember it carefully. In Pandemonium, the newly built capital of hell, Satan rallies his followers with masterful rhetoric, a moment that has also come up in exam papers. Around him gather Mammon, Beelzebub, Belial, and Moloch, each offering different strategies for revenge. In the end, Satan himself volunteers to seek out God's new creation, earth and mankind, and to corrupt it. The journey that follows is epic in scope. Satan braves the vast abyss, recalling the wanderings of Odysseus or Aeneas, until he enters the newly created world. Along the way, the angelic war is retold from several viewpoints. This war raged for 3 days, ending when the Son of God single-handedly defeated the rebels and cast them into hell. Afterward, God created the world, shaping Adam and Eve as the first human beings. They were granted freedom, yet forbidden to eat from the tree of knowledge, and this prohibition has been pointed out in exam. The heart of the poem is the temptation scene. Satan, disguised as a serpent, appeals to Eve's vanity and uses persuasive speech to convince her to eat the forbidden fruit. Eve falls, and Adam follows knowingly out of love for her. Milton presents Adam as a tragic yet heroic figure, guilty of a greater sin because he understood the cost. Their act brings lust, guilt, and shame for the first time, and soon the pair quarrel, blaming one another. Meanwhile, Satan returns to hell in triumph, only to find himself and his followers transformed into snakes, a punishment that mirrors their corruption. The narrative then shifts toward repentance. Eve appeals to Adam for reconciliation, and together they seek God's mercy. They kneel in humility, and their prayers are heard. In visions granted by the archangel Michael, Adam sees the future of mankind, war, suffering, and the flood. Troubled, he wonders if hope remains, but Michael assures him of redemption through Christ. This promise of salvation has also appeared in exam questions. At the end, Adam and Eve are cast out of Eden. The final lines are tender. Michael reminds Adam that he carries a paradise within thee, happier far, meaning the potential for inner peace. The poem closes with a couple living hand in hand, beginning the long history of human struggle, temptation, and redemption. The theme of the fall, paired with the promise of salvation, has been highlighted in exam as central to Milton's vision. Milton begins his epic with a sweeping introduction, recounting both the fall of man and Satan's rebellion against God. This framing has been specifically noted in exam, so keep it firmly in mind. At the opening, we see Satan and his host of fallen angels writhing in the burning lake of hell, freshly cast down after their defeat. Yet, far from despairing, Satan rises with defiance. With a stirring speech, he rallies his army, urging them not to yield, but instead to strike back at God by corrupting his newest creation, mankind. The fallen angels are described in military terms, a reminder that they once fought as heavenly warriors. Together, they construct the palace of Pandemonium, a dazzling seat of infernal power. The first book closes with this vivid image, the demons preparing for their great council, where they will debate how best to oppose God. Milton sets the stage with an invocation to the heavenly muse, one of the most famous openings in English poetry. Listen closely. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe, with loss of Eden till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. These lines and their exact phrasing have appeared in exam, so it is vital you recognize them. Milton then calls on the muse who inspired Moses on Mount Sinai, or perhaps the waters of Siloam near Jerusalem. This blending of biblical and classical invocations has also been asked in exam. He declares his bold aim to attempt things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme, a line that has repeatedly surfaced in exam contexts. So right from the start, Milton positions his epic not only as a biblical story, but as a daring work that seeks to surpass all earlier poetry. The grandeur of Book 1 sets the tone for everything that follows in Paradise Lost. In Book 2, Satan ascends his throne and summons a great council of the fallen angels. One by one, they propose strategies. Moloch urges open war, reckless and violent. Belial, more subtle, advises caution and inaction, fearing that further defiance might bring greater punishment. Mammon suggests they build their own kingdom in hell, content to rule away from God's presence. But Beelzebub, speaking under Satan's influence, proposes a far more cunning plan to corrupt the newly created race of man. The assembly agrees, and Satan himself offers to undertake this perilous journey. He soon passes through the gates of hell, guarded by the monstrous figures of sin and death, and sets off across the vast abyss. Book 3 shifts the perspective to heaven. Here, God foresees Satan's plan to bring about mankind's fall, but he reminds the angels that man has free will. This emphasis on free will has been highlighted in exam, so keep it close in memory. The Son of God, moved by compassion, steps forward and offers himself as ransom for humanity's salvation, foreshadowing the redemptive arc of the poem. Meanwhile, Satan, now disguised as a lesser angel, deceives Uriel, the guardian of the sun, and learns the path to paradise. By the book's end, Satan has reached the borders of Eden, ready to launch his temptation. In Book 4, we witness a rare moment of self-reflection. Standing on Mount Nephates, Satan contemplates the greatness he once had and the despair of his fall, emotions that deepen his envy and hatred. From here, he spies Adam and Eve in their unfallen innocence, which only sharpens his bitterness. Entering paradise, he disguises himself as a cormorant perched to observe the couple. Yet, his presence does not go unnoticed. Uriel warns Gabriel, and the angels confront Satan directly. Though defiant, he is forced to flee, leaving Adam and Eve still blissfully unaware of the danger surrounding them. Book 5 begins with unease. Eve wakes from a troubling dream, whispered into her mind by Satan himself. Adam tries to comfort her, but both sense that evil has drawn near. To protect them, God sends the archangel Raphael, who recounts the story of Satan's rebellion. The tale begins with Satan's jealousy of the Son, whom God has elevated above all. Satan's rhetoric sways many, yet one angel, Abdiel, resists. Abdiel denounces Satan's pride, proclaims the rebels' doom, and returns loyally to God's side. His courage foreshadows the coming war and reminds us of Milton's larger theme that even in the face of corruption, steadfast faith can prevail. In Book 6, Raphael continues the tale of the war in heaven. Abdiel, the lone angel who resisted Satan, returns to God's side, and the great battle unfolds. For 3 days, the armies clash in epic combat. Satan's forces even invent artillery, weapons so destructive they throw the loyal angels to the ground. Yet human inventions cannot alter divine power. God sends forth his Son, who single-handedly defeats Satan's host, casting them down into hell. The Son then returns to heaven in triumph, greeted with a parade of praise from the loyal angels. Book 7 shifts the focus back to creation. Raphael reminds Adam that excessive knowledge can be dangerous, and this warning has been tested in exam. He then narrates how God, through the Son, shaped the material world after Satan's fall. The heavens rejoice at this new creation, and Raphael describes the 6 days of work mirroring the Genesis account, another detail that has appeared in exam. The climax is the creation of man, God's final masterpiece, celebrated by the heavenly hosts. Book 8 continues the dialogue between Adam and Raphael. Adam asks questions about the nature of the universe and the movements of the planet. Raphael gently cautions him to focus on earthly matters, leaving the mysteries of heaven alone. Then Adam recounts his own creation, his first moments of awareness, his encounter with God, and the gift of Eve as his companion. A discussion on love follows, reflecting Milton's concern with harmony between reason and passion. The book closes with Raphael's parting counsel, reminding Adam to resist temptation and remain steadfast in obedience. Book 9 marks a turning point in Milton's epic. He announces that the poem will now shift from heroic triumph to tragic drama. This movement into a tragic mode has been highlighted in exam, so hold on to it carefully. The focus narrows to Adam and Eve, and Milton begins weaving the speech rhythms of their marriage into the verse. This subtle technique, where dialogue reflects emotion, has also been noted in exam papers. The action begins with Satan, who enters paradise disguised as a serpent. His goal is clear: to bring about the fall. Meanwhile, Eve proposes that she and Adam separate for their work in the garden. Adam hesitates, warning of possible danger, but in the end, they part alone. Eve encounters the serpent. Through flattery and persuasive argument, Satan tempts her to eat from the tree of knowledge. This moment, the temptation of Eve has been directly tested in exam. Eve eats and then shares the fruit with Adam. He eats not out of deception, but knowingly, choosing love of Eve over obedience to God. With that act, both fall. They immediately feel guilt, shame, and a sudden awareness of lust, realizing the depth of their sin. This sequence of temptation, fall, and shame has repeatedly been asked in exam. Milton dramatizes this collapse through dialogue. The marital quarrel between Adam and Eve, their first after disobedience, becomes a tragic echo of their earlier harmony. The rhythms of their speech capture the emotional clash. For instance, Adam's words are slow and measured. Why dost thou then suggest to me distrust, knowing who I am, as I know who thou art? His tone reflects controlled anger. In contrast, Eve's voice rushes forward with urgency. But let us once be true to one another. Though the tempest rage outside, we'll weather it together. This contrast in rhythm and tone has been directly highlighted in exam analysis. In Book 10, judgment arrives. God sends the Son to confront Adam and Eve and pronounce their punishment. Eve is condemned to pain in childbirth, while Adam must labor hard for his survival. These sentences shape the destiny of humanity. Meanwhile, in hell, sin and death sense what has happened on earth. With grim eagerness, they construct a bridge linking hell to the mortal world, ensuring evil will now flow freely into human life. Satan, believing he has triumphed, returns to hell to boast of his victory. But his pride is short-lived. He and his followers are suddenly transformed into snakes, forced to reenact their corruption by hissing and devouring only dust. Back on earth, Adam and Eve experience despair, but gradually they move toward reconciliation. Together, they seek repentance, hoping for divine mercy and redemption. Milton gives Adam some of his most poignant lines here, later borrowed by Mary Shelley as the epigraph to Frankenstein. Adam cries, "Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay, to mold me man? Did I solicit thee?" This quotation has been directly raised in exam, so be sure to remember it. The book closes with a turning point. The couple, once divided by blame, now united in repentance, preparing for the long journey ahead. In Book 11, the tone shifts toward sorrow and resolution. The Son intercedes on behalf of Adam and Eve, defending their remorse before God. Yet, justice must prevail. They cannot remain in Eden. God sends Michael, the archangel, to remove them from paradise, a command that fills the pair with grief. Eve is gently placed into a deep sleep, while Michael reveals to Adam the long future of mankind. Adam sees visions of sin, violence, and death, but also exceptions, like Enoch and Noah, who are preserved by their virtue. Most strikingly, Milton takes a global view of history here. In lines 389 to 393, he refers to the Agra and Lahore of Great Mughal. This mention of the Mughal Empire in India has been asked in exam, and it situates Milton's vision of empire alongside Persia, Greece, and Rome. By weaving India into the fabric of world history, Milton signals the global scope of his epic imagination. Book 12 continues Michael's revelations. Adam learns of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, a symbol of human pride and confusion. He is then shown the covenant with Abraham, through whom God's promise will be fulfilled. The lineage of Moses, Isaac, and Jacob extends this covenant, preparing the way for redemption. Finally, Michael offers the great comfort that Christ will overcome both Satan and death through his sacrifice. This prophecy of salvation has appeared in exam, and it serves as the poem's theological climax. Consoled by this vision, Adam joins Eve as they leave Eden. Milton closes with unforgettable lines. "Some natural tears they dropped, but wiped them soon. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and providence their guide. They hand in hand with wandering steps and slow through Eden took their solitary way."